As time passed, the children grew up, each carving out their own path in the shadow of that tragedy. Stevie, now in her late 30s, is known for her grit, building a life for herself and giving back to her community. Her journey stands as a real testament to survival. Daryl and the Quads chose to live quietly, guarding their privacy and focusing on healing away from the cameras. Though her life ended in senseless violence, friends remember Sheila as a woman full of warmth, kindness, and steel. She was a fierce mom who faced huge struggles but never wavered in her love for her kids. Her spirit lives on in them, in their toughness, their growth, and their drive to keep moving forward despite the terrible loss they suffered. If this story grabbed your attention, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We drop new true crime videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp and stay vigilant. Sarasota, Florida is a quiet spot where folks felt safe and the days just drifted by without a care in the world. Then came November 7th, 1997, and that peace was shattered for good. Inside one house, a brutal act occurred that would rattle the whole neighborhood to its core. The target was Sheila Bellish, just 35, a loving mom whose end came with terrifying cruelty. Around 4:15 that afternoon, her 13-year-old Stevie walked in buzzing with excitement over some big news. Her crush had actually agreed to take her to the school dance coming up. She was already picturing the outfit and the night, but as she got to the door, her mood suddenly shifted to confusion. The front door was standing wide open, which was something that just never happened at their place. The house was dead silent, so she yelled for her mom and crept toward the kitchen. The sight froze her cold. Her mother lay slumped on the floor, unmoving, with blood staining the tiles. Splashes on the walls and counters painted a grim picture of the violence that had just gone down. Panicked, Stevie grabbed the phone to dial 911, but the handset was slick with blood. Terrified, she bolted for the bedroom to try and find a different line. She started dialing with trembling fingers, but stopped, hoping it was a nightmare, and walked back to the kitchen. Nothing had changed. Her mom was really gone, and when cops showed up, they walked into a tragedy. Sheila lay face down on the floor, one leg straight and the other tucked awkwardly beneath her. Her face and chest were badly mangled, looking like she'd taken a bullet from point-blank range. The creepiest part wasn't the murder itself, though. It was who had been left there to witness it. Sheila had 6 kids, including a set of quadruplets who weren't even 2 years old yet. Those 4 toddlers were home during the whole thing, wandering the hall when their sister walked in. Only Timmy could talk a little, but he couldn't give the detectives the details they really needed. Their dad, Jamie Bellish, tried his best to gently coax some info out of the little boy. In sad, simple words, Timmy just said a man came in and hurt mommy, but nobody knew who. Why go after Sheila, a super devoted mom? Cops ruled out a burglary almost immediately. No valuables were missing, and there was no sign of assault, so this wasn't just random. The intruder had walked in with one specific goal, and that was to kill Sheila. What looked like a tough mystery was about to turn into a wild tale of backstabbing and greed. Here is the sad story of Sheila Bellish, born Sheila Lee Walsh back on October 19th, 1962 in Topeka. Even as a kid, she turned heads with her blonde hair and bright look, but her grit really stood out. She was the kind who never gave up no matter how hard things got, earning everyone's respect. Once she finished high school, she took a job working the front desk at a law office. But she had dreams way bigger than just sitting behind that desk answering phone. She wanted a life full of love and stability, and it seemed like she found it when she met Alan. Alan was everything she thought she wanted: good-looking, smooth-talking, and incredibly charming. Sheila really believed fate had finally sent her the perfect guy she'd been waiting for. Things moved fast. He proposed after just 3 dates, and she got swept up and said yes immediately. They tied the knot in 1982 and settled down together in Salem. Soon enough, they had 2 girls, Stevie and Daryl, and to everyone else, their life looked picture perfect. Sheila, however, hadn't yet seen the dark truth hiding behind her husband's polished exterior. Alan was born June 5th, 1955 in Eugene, raised by a single mom who was totally unhinged. Growing up for him meant dealing with serious abuse and some really rough treatment. One time, his mom beat him with a stick so bad she broke his cheekbone and ribs. Another time, she actually poured gas on him and tried to light him up, which is terrifying. All that trauma turned him into a guy full of hate, lies, and a need to control everything. Sheila thought she married a solid guy, but Alan's true colors started showing right after the wedding. He had ambition, sure, but avarice had warped it. He dreamed up an electronics empire and drafted a business proposal that looked spectacular on paper. Cocky and self-assured, he pitched the idea straight to his father-in-law, Don Walsh. Don admired the guy's confidence and bought into Alan's dream hook, line, and sinker. He didn't just hand over his nest egg, he signed over real estate titles to Alan as well. He figured this bold move would secure the family fortune, but Alan's big promises were nothing but hot air. Instead of funneling cash into the company, he blew it on five-star meals and high-rolling nights out. He bought custom suits and lived like a king while the startup crashed and burned within 12 months, leaving the Walshes destitute. Every asset vanished. Their financial security was obliterated in a single strike. Sheila was crushed and disillusioned, having bet everything on him only to watch him bankrupt her entire bloodline. Yet, even with her dreams shattered, she chose to stick it out with him. Her grit gave Alan the breathing room to reinvent himself, so he packed him up and headed for San Antonio, Texas to start over. A fresh start meant a fresh handle, so he legally changed his last name to Blackthorne. With that new moniker, he launched a completely different hustle. He zeroed in on a niche racket, muscle stimulators, flipping them for massive margins to rich doctors. Alan thrived in this game. He was a natural-born con man with a silver tongue and magnetic charm. Even the most skeptical marks eventually folded under his smooth sales pitch. In no time flat, he was rolling in dough again, driving exotics, shopping at high-end stores, and living the fantasy. But while the bank account looked great, the marriage was circling the drain. Sheila couldn't ignore the red flags anymore. Alan's dark side was surfacing way too often. His need for control bled into the bedroom, where his twisted demands became a serious wedge between them. The confident woman who fell for him was now constantly plotting her exit strategy. Splitting up wasn't just a distant possibility anymore. It was her only lifeline because Alan wasn't into romance. He got off on humiliation and total domination. With other women, he set up weird power plays focused on being the master. The real kicker was that he forced his own wife to sit there and watch the whole degrading show. At the start, Sheila went along with it, trying to keep the family unit intact. But as the months dragged on, the psychological toll broke her. The vibrant woman she used to be withered into a scared, nervous shadow. Eventually, she moved into the guest room. She couldn't stomach his rules anymore, but her withdrawal just poured gas on his anger, and the abuse ramped up. Nasty words turned into fists real quick. One time, he actually jammed her head in a toilet trying to drown her. Another time, he beat her within an inch of her life. Sheila went to the cops about the terror, having no clue this guy had a rap sheet of doing this before. He'd been hitched twice already, and both exes had lived through the same nightmare. By 1987, 5 years in, she was done. They got divorced, but that piece of paper just kicked off a decade-long war in court. Fighting over their girls, Daryl and Stevie, got ugly fast with both sides screaming about abuse and neglect. Even after they both found new partners, the bad blood didn't cool down one bit. In 1993, Sheila found happiness with a salesman named Jamie Bellish. They got married and escaped to Sarasota to get away from Alan. 2 years later, their family exploded in size when Sheila gave birth to quadruplets. The news went viral, turning their house of 8 into a local curiosity. And for a minute, it looked like the drama was history. But Alan was like a dog with a bone. He just couldn't let it go. Losing custody of his daughters made him livid, and watching his ex thrive with a new brood just fed his obsession. He hired a private eye to track the Belush clan down in Florida. Once he had their address, his mind turned to payback, and he looped in his golf buddy Daniel Rocha. Rocha was a two-bit hustler, always scrambling to pay the bills. He worshipped Alan's money and status, seeing him as the big shot he desperately wanted to be. Once Alan asked for a favor, Rocha didn't hesitate to say yes, but the story Alan spun was completely made up. He claimed that Sheila was abusing their daughters and that she had it coming. At first, Alan said a brutal beating would be enough, but he quickly changed his mind. He wanted her dead. Rocha knew people in that line of work, so for $14,000, He found a hitman named Jose Luis Del Toro who was willing to do the job. On November 7th, 1997, Del Toro took his grandmother's car and headed for Sarasota. He made 2 stops along the way. The first was at a sporting goods store to pick up some camouflage gear so he could blend in. Then, after getting turned around, he pulled into a gas station to ask for directions. Finally arriving at the Bellish home, he forced his way in and stood there with his gun drawn, watching Sheila take care of her little one. He paused for a split second. She didn't look like the monster Alan had described. Instead, she just looked like a loving mom surrounded by chaotic toddlers. Doubt started creeping in, and he thought about bailing, but then everything changed when Sheila spotted him. Terrified, she screamed, and Del Toro reacted on instinct and pulled the trigger. The shot hit her right in the face, dropping her instantly to the kitchen floor. Just to make sure she was gone, he grabbed a knife off the counter and stabbed her before running out, leaving a nightmare behind him. 6 kids, including 4 babies, were crawling through the blood, crying for a mother who wasn't ever going to answer them. The hunt for justice for Sheila Bellish picked up speed as soon as detectives found the proof they needed. The killer hadn't been nearly as careful as he planned to be. DNA left at the crime scene gave the detectives exactly what they needed to run tests. Plus, a sharp neighbor had noticed a strange car parked outside and jotted down the plate number, a small act that blew the case wide open. The suspect made a run for the Mexican border, but the chase didn't stop there. Authorities identified him and took him into custody pretty quickly. They brought him back to the States to face the music for what he had done. In July of 1999, Jose Luis Del Toro finally admitted he was the one involved. He pled guilty to armed burglary and first-degree murder, landing himself 2 back-to-back life sentences with no chance of parole. As detectives pieced together the timeline leading up to that bloody afternoon, more names started popping up in interrogations and court files. Sammy Gonzalez, Del Toro's cousin, decided to cooperate with the authorities. His statements laid out exactly how the whole plot was put together. Gonzalez was the one who hired Del Toro for the hit, and his testimony pointed the finger at even more people. Court records and the guilty pleas that followed revealed the entire hierarchy of the conspiracy. Gonzalez ended up pleading guilty to solicitation of capital murder in 2003 and got 15 years behind bars. But the hunt for the mastermind didn't stop with just the hitman and the middleman. Paper trails, witness stories, and statements from the investigation all led detectives straight to a man driven by a deep obsession with revenge. Alan denied having anything to do with it, over and over again. However, the evidence shown at trial told a completely different story. Witnesses painted a picture of a guy consumed by bitterness over his ex-wife's new life and losing custody of their kid. According to court statements, Alan recruited help, put up money, and pushed for payback that escalated from simple threats to murder. The jury found him guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and domestic violence. Just like the shooter he hired, he was handed 2 consecutive life sentences with 0 chance of parole. They shipped him off to a federal prison down in Beaumont, Texas. Daniel Rocha, the golfing buddy who connected Alan with the people willing to do his dirty work, also got caught up in the legal mess. Portrayed at trial as a small-time crook who needed cash and looked up to Alan, Rocha was convicted for helping set up the hit. The judge gave him life without the possibility of parole. The court ruled that this wasn't some random, frantic act by a stranger. It was a calculated conspiracy born out of spite that ended in tragedy. During the trial, bits of testimony revealed exactly what drove these men. There was talk of money, promises of bonuses, and disturbing chats about hurting Sheila enough so she couldn't care for her kids, all to win a custody battle. Testimony painted a clear picture of cash payouts and the cold logistics of pulling off the hit. Meanwhile, the heartbreaking loss suffered by the kids remained the center of every court session. In the end, the jury answered the question detectives had chased since jotting down that tag number and bagging the evidence. This murder was the product of planning, recruiting, bribing, and pure betrayal. Trial after trial, witnesses revealed just how meticulously the plot against Sheila Bellish was hatched. Conversations about simply punishing her slowly morphed into something much darker. What began as talk of intimidation soon turned into talk of death, with reasoning that was chillingly practical. Taking Sheila out would end things fast, giving her no chance to fight back or protect her babies. To the men involved, this brutal act became nothing more than a matter of convenience. However, even among the crew, some serious doubts started to creep in. Later stories revealed moments of hesitation, realizing Sheila wasn't the villain Alan claimed, but just a loving mom. Sadly, those doubts came too late to stop the hit, leaving 6 little kids and a grieving family in ruin. The driving force behind Alan's actions was simple, yet absolutely poisonous. It all boiled down to rage, a bruised ego, and a sick need to control everything. When Sheila divorced him, won the girls, and built a new life in Florida with a husband and quads, Alan took it as the ultimate insult. He just couldn't stomach her freedom, her happiness, or the fact she moved on. In his twisted mind, revenge was the only answer. For masterminding the murder-for-hire plot, Alan got slapped with 2 life terms with 0 chance of parole. But locking him up didn't mean the drama in his life was over. In 2001, a prison gang jumped him and he barely survived, forcing guards to move him for safety. On November 18th, 2014, at 59, Alan died in federal custody without the cause ever being released. The weight of his crimes fell hardest on Sheila's kids when she was killed in 1997. Stevie and Daryl, her daughters with Alan, were only 13 and 11 at the time. The quads she had with her second husband, Jaime Bellish, were basically babies, not even 2 yet. Left momless, the kids were raised by Jaime, who shouldered the massive load of caring for 6 grieving little ones. With help from his family, he worked hard to give them stability and guide them through the rough years ahead.